Hi, so this is Brett Olson. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the changes I made to Khartes that you can use for extensive annotation volume data in some of the Vesuvius segments. So let's go ahead and start up Khartes. Like I said, this is my own fork of the program, but we'll go and start it up. So here's the uh, main window. We'll go ahead and make a new project. Demo annotation. And the first thing we're going to do is generate a volume. So I'm going to use a special volume. So this contains the volume grid. So I'll pull this up here. So these cell y-axis z, 174, whatever. These are 500 by 500 by 500 pixel TIFFs. And so these are especially used to make accessing the data much faster. So there's this custom load TIFFs as zarr that will enable you to have fast access to these. So in order to do that, it's important that these be on a fast hard drive. So you'll really want like an internal SSD rather than an external HDD, and that's going to make accessing the data much faster. I'll show you how this works in just a sec. So we'll call this volume demo. We'll go ahead and create it, and it should be able to load in pretty fast. Okay, so you note that the obvious biggest difference here compared to standard Khartes is that we are only seeing a small section around where we are. So we can still see we're at Z level 7250, X 4000, Y 4000. But we're only seeing a little section around this. Whereas normally, once you've created a volume, which of course takes a while, in standard Khartes, you'd be able to see the whole thing. The reason for that is because Khartes, before these changes, would load that entire thing into memory at once. And that obviously limited how much you could hold. So either you would have to downsample, so it would be less detailed, or you'd have to select a subsection that you were actually interested in segmenting. So with these changes now, you can access all of the data. And what will happen is, right now, we've only loaded into memory the region directly around the point where I'm at. So I can sort of drag around here as I go in X, Y. And as we go outside of that range, you see it stutters for just a minute. As we go outside this range, it's going to stutter for a second. That is Khartes loading in all of that new data into memory. And so as long as you're on a fairly fast drive, that stutter will only take a second or two, and then you'll go right back. If it's on a hard drive, it can stutter for a little bit longer, which is a little frustrating. But if you're on a good drive, it'll be pretty quick. And so this lets you access all of the data simultaneously. So this by itself is kind of a useful change to Khartes. But the main change that I made to Khartes that I think is the most useful is what I call volume segmentation. So let me move to a nice pretty region here. Probably a region where you've got reasonable separation. Yeah, this is a good spot. So there's this new tab down here called volume segmentation. We're going to click on that. One thing you can do, because I got a little frustrated with the very, very large region, is you can move directly to a position. We're not going to do that right now. But we can link the signal data that we're getting from this, from the TIFFs that we download from the Vesuvius challenge, to a label data, where we're going to go in and label different sheets of the papyrus with different labels and sort of separate them out that way. And so first thing we need to do is generate a new file for that. So we'll select a directory. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the fastcubes directory right here, and that should be, that'll be fine. So we'll open the annotation directory, we'll create a new file, and it'll be fastcubes demo.volzar annotations.volzar. Okay, so there will be a file there after we save it. So and then if we pull up here, you can see that there's this folder here, and this is a zarr directory, and so this will contain all of the label information. And it's set up in such a way that areas of the region that are zeros don't take up any data. So this whole thing right now only contains 393 bytes because it's initiated as all zeros. And we'll need to use Khartes to go in and label everything to start filling it out. So let's go and open this annotation window because this is where most of your work is going to happen. So what you've got here is very similar to the main window. So if you look just at these center stacks, you see it says Z 7250, X 3542, Y 3997, and then on the left and right, we've got ranges. So for the top level, we're going down Z levels and up Z levels. So you can kind of see a wide range of Z levels. Here you're seeing a wide range of X around this region. Here you're seeing a wide range of Y around this region. And so this is very helpful for sort of identifying maybe, like, for instance, this little bump right here, you can see in these two Z levels, but then it goes away in the other Z levels. So if this bump was bumping into one of the other sheets, that would make it easier to tell whether that was really a separate sheet or one of the same sheets. And so that can be useful. Or say right here, you can see this kind of looks like a single sheet. But as you go up to higher Z levels, you say, oh, no, actually, those are different sheets. And so we need to be able to segment them. Okay, so this is just the visualization. I personally find this quite useful. You can zoom around the same sort of way. We're going to go up in Z a little bit just to try and I want a little cleaner area to start with. Yeah. Let's go over here. And again, just like before, you can drag around, you can look at different regions, etc., etc. Yeah. Okay, here's a good starting point. See this nice clean papyrus. Okay, so the main thing we're going to do here is add labels. So we're going to click this auto update annotations. And so what this is going to do is as I drag my visualization area around, there's a little region right at the center that is going to start coloring things in. And so each color is a different contiguous region. So right here, you're seeing a contiguous, all of these red sort of touch each other. And you see they don't touch each other at this Z level. They touch each other at a different Z level, and so we can identify that. And so let's find a good clean start region. Let's actually cut down Z. Cut down again. Okay, so here we go. So we've got three regions. We've got this purple region down here that is this big mess of things that are stuck together. We've got this red region here that is pretty clean, and then we've got this little green region up here that touches over this thing. So we're going to start annotating this red papyrus. So initially, we'll just say that we need to give it a number. We'll go ahead and call this, I don't know, 1000, and we'll click Save. Okay, so now when it's saved, we've now got a saved label ID. If we go in and pull up, again, this zarr file, you can see that it is now almost a megabyte. That's because we started filling it out. And so these things are now, these yellow pixels are now saved in the zarr file so that we can pull them up in other programs, use them for other things. So we're going to keep going on and sort of continuing to segment this. So now as we go down, you can see we're touching this. So this purple region is now sort of contiguous between both the sheet we want to annotate and this other sheet. And that's not great. So what we want to do is we're going to want to split that. So you can see that as we split it, what happened is we mostly split off this purple thing from this yellow thing. So it got split from one thing into two things. And the yellow one is pretty good. It's not quite perfect. Let's zoom in a little bit. And in fact, let's move down a little bit. So you can see here's the contacts. So let's go ahead and try and split that again. Sometimes the splits work a little bit differently depending on where you are, and that is actually a much better split. So we'll go ahead and save that. And we'll save that as 1000. And then we'll go up here. There's a little notch here that we'll want to split out. And there we go. So we're starting to annotate down into here. And so then there's a nice clean one right here. We can just kind of go around as we go. So there we go. So now the other thing we have that's useful is you see there's this clear button right here. So if you've made a mistake and you say, oh, well, actually, this was bleeding over somewhere. I don't want to do that. We can clear it. It will re-annotate, and it'll say, oh, OK, well, now it's this red region. But we do actually want to save that, so we'll save it. But that's how you clean up your mistakes. And for regions where it's easy, there is this autofill. So let's go ahead and let me pull up this. OK. So this is the shell where we're running Khartes. So we're going to go ahead and fill. And it's going to, it says, OK, it didn't have a lot of luck doing an autofill here because it requires things not be close together. So that's reasonable. But you can see as we go down, we will continue to, so here's another region where we've got some contact between these, so we'll want to split them. And again, it does a very good clean job of doing that split. So we'll save that magenta one. And we can just kind of walk along, and as long as the contacts are not too big, we'll actually do a pretty respectable job of just walking along, save, walk along. So now here's one where we've got a little bit more contact. Let's see how well the split works here. Okay, so it found this little thing, which is in fact part of it, but so we'll save it, but we want to, it didn't split. Okay, there we go. The second split got it. So now, again, you can see, nice and clean. Works really well. And as we keep walking along, we can just keep doing this. It mostly works pretty well in regions where the contact points are not super big. So you can see, again, we did a split, and we can save that. As we start getting into more and more complex areas, you're going to run into more and more problems. So let's start, let's try splitting this and see what it does. This is starting to get a little bit more complicated. Actually, that did beautifully. And then here, now it's continuing into this purple region. So we're going to want to split the purple region. See where the purple region splits. Okay, well, it split off this thing, which is perfectly reasonable split, but not actually the one we wanted. So we'll split it again. See if we can split it. Okay, there's a perfectly reasonable split, but again, not quite what we wanted. We want to split this thing off. So we'll split it one more time. Yeah, so that's not too bad. That's pretty reasonable, actually. So now we've got this purple, or this sort of magenta one that's continuing down where we want. We'll save that. And then we can go ahead and you just kind of keep walking along and keep doing this until you're happy with where you get. So now this is a bit too big still. You can see we're touching other strands there. So there we peeled off that thing. And you just kind of keep splitting it until you're happy with where it ends up. So yeah. So that's kind of how this works. Let me find a region that is a little emptier, and I'll show you how the autofill works, because I'm quite pleased with that. And you need a region that is very clean in order for it to work, but it saves a ton of time for that. So if you have one of these regions where there's not really a whole lot of manual labor, or there's not really a whole lot of useful visualization to work. So let's go and bump up the size a little bit. Okay, so this green one, let's go and mark that as 50. I'm kind of using arbitrary labels right now. And then let's try autofill. And then we will hold up this other one. So you see it says, okay, autofilling label 50 around position, XYZ. It's going through and processing these. So what this is doing is starting on a region centered around that one that we initially labeled. And it's trying to extend that label in all directions. And it's using a set of criteria that I won't go into the details, but it's trying to figure out whether that extension is going to be reasonable. And so now it finished, and we can take a look at it. And you can see here, there we go. Sorry, we have the same color for the saved label as one of these other ones. So this magenta region is the region that just got autofilled. So we only initially filled in this region, but you can see that it was managed to extend it all the way up here and all the way down here. And it also managed to extend it actually quite a bit in Z as well, down to where, again, down to where you have these contact points. So as long as it is sort of out in free space, it's going to do quite a good job. So you can see that as we move up here, so it didn't extend here in Z because we had a contact patch here, but it moved up further at the higher Z level because there was no contact patch. But then, we might move up here, and then once we're up here, it's quite easy to go in and say, okay, well now we've got this red region. We're going to go ahead and run the split algorithm a couple of times, and now we should be able to grab a nice clean, so a nice clean section that is mapping correctly to what we want, which is this green section here. So that is the core tool here. Is we go through the data and we generate a new file that contains labels for all of the different sheets that we're interested in. And so the idea is you generate those labels, and then we can use those labels to generate meshes. The mesh generation is still a work in progress, but should be fairly straightforward. I want to get results for this out. There are a couple of changes you can make here. The Z radius, Y radius, and X radius would change the size of your little auto annotation area. I found that 30 is a pretty reasonable threshold. As you get bigger, it will slow down because all of this is doing a fair bit of computation on the fly as you drag this around. And so you'll want to try and avoid running too much because it will slow you down quite a lot. But if you get too small, it's going to have a harder time doing the auto splits because it has less context for the area that you're working with. So this is freely available to download. I'll put a link in the description of the video and up on the Discord so that everyone can download. It should be fairly straightforward to set up if you've done anything with Khartes. Again, I will be working on a mesh generation from these to enable basically turning these into segments. And then while the splitting function works pretty well for regions with not too high contact points, in the really dense regions it does struggle a bit. And so that's something that development is ongoing. So like here's a region where by eye you can pretty easily tell what's going on, and if we sort of run a couple splits here, it will likely come up with pretty reasonable estimates. So here it sort of split off this little tail. We'll do another split on red. Another split. So the other thing you can do here, there are 3 different ways of doing a split. The one that I tend to use is just if you leave the split IDs empty, it will do a split along what is defined as the natural axis. So there you can see it actually did a pretty reasonable job of splitting off these yellow strands from these green strands. And then say if we split the green again, it will probably do a pretty reasonable job of splitting those. So you can see the green got split out very effectively. You can also force it to split along a particular axis. So if you know that the 2 strands are separated along the XYZ axes, you can force a split. So let me split that out so we can force a split along the x-axis. That actually does a really nice job of splitting those off. You can also force a split along any of the axes. If you have 2 labels that are right next to each other, so let's go ahead and label this green one, because that looks like it's just this one strand. Say we'll call that 60. Okay, and then we move down a little bit. So now we have, sorry, the colors are a bit confusing here, but we have a pink region down here that is unannotated. And if you look at the linked labels, you see it's connected to both 50 and 60. So we have 50 and 60 here. One is pink, one is blue. Sorry, the pink is overlapping here. And you see that we've auto-filled in the split IDs. So what that will do is uses the source and sink of the cut algorithm that tries to split them as the already annotated regions. So sometimes that does a better job. Yeah, so you can see that's actually done a really clean job here of cutting these two apart at their natural seams. So we can just go in and save these, and they look beautiful. And yeah, so that's how the program works. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. I'm open to suggestions, bugs, bug reports, anything else. And I'd love to see it get used and try and get some useful work done out of it. Thanks.